Hi, and welcome to the Intuitive Living, Intuitive Eating RD podcast with myself, Kathy Richards, registered dietitian with over 24 years of experience. I help women in midlife learn how to listen to their body through intuitive eating so that they can enjoy food and heal their relationship with food. So I wanted to hop on today. I'm using a new platform for the podcast, so bear with me as I learn it. I haven't been able to figure out the intro, exit, trailer music thing. But I wanted to hop on and talk about something that's come up a few times with clients in the last week. And as we enter into, December, something that comes up again and again, year after year. People are wondering, what can I do to have healthy, happy holidays? Like, what kind of food things should I think about? How should I get through the holidays? And they're nervous about eating and holidays. So I had 2 or 3 clients even bring it up today. And I would take that question and I would pose it back to you, like, what feels scary about eating during the holidays? Or how do you think your health will change over the holiday period? Because we have to remember that eating, there's no good, there's no bad food if we're thinking about it from the intuitive living lens and intuitive eating. But eating, it's a lot more than just putting fuel in our bodies, right? Like, eating is connection. Eating is love. Some people, that's their way of expressing love. They like to cook for us. They like to give us food. So we don't want to go into the holidays, and how I work with my clients is not to help them restrict food, but help them expand their nourishment and expand their curiosity about how food can, provide that connection for them. They can enjoy food and get away from that restriction mentality, but how they can go into the holidays with a bit more intention around their food. So what the heck does that mean? Stay tuned, because I'm going to walk you through some tips and tricks that I've shared over the years, and you'll see how my approach has changed as I've gone to more of the intuitive eating lens, plus, bringing in my past experience teaching emotional eating programs for years. So welcome. I'm so glad to have you here. I'm back to the podcast, best that I can to record it on a regular basis. I like to talk with my hands, so it's a bit hard how I'm recording. I used to record on my phone, but the platform's changed, so I'm back to using my microphone. Hopefully everything works well and you can hear me. So if you have any questions or any topics that you want me to bring to the podcast, comment below, let me know, send me a message, Kathy@kathyrichardsrd.com. My website is now officially live. It's been revamped. It took a long time, but it's up and it's running. If you go to my website and you have trouble with anything, let me know, because I'm still working with the developer on some back end kind of issues. But what do healthy, happy holidays look like, and what can you kind of come into the season with that will help you feel like you're staying on track, right? Because a lot of people fall into the habit of, this is holiday eating. There's food everywhere, food I don't see often. So I'm going to eat that food when it comes, and I'm going to eat as much as I can because it only comes once a year. I want you to get a bit more intentional about your eating and get a bit more curious about it. So number 1 tip and trick to get through the holidays is to remember that food is fuel, right? So, food isn't just fuel. It should be enjoyed. It should be shared. It should be part of celebrations, and we should enjoy food. But what I mean by food is fuel is, let's not skip meals to save up for that one meal that's coming or that one day of eating. Nobody's health and wellness journey has ended with one day of overeating, right? Overeating, emotional eating, those are things that if you're focused on intuitive living and intuitive eating, those things are going to happen. They're not wrong. We're human. If I feel sad about something or if I feel stressed about something, I can see myself sometimes going back to those emotional eating habits. But that's a coping mechanism, and that's not wrong. We all have different things that will change. If our sleep, especially over the holidays, if our sleep is less, if our stress is higher, those things can play with appetite regulation, and you might not feel satiated or as full. You might have more cravings. Those things will change day to day based on change in activity, change in hormones, change in stress levels. So that's why following a meal plan where you eat the same thing day in and day out isn't really a way to nourish our body and fuel it in the most efficient way, because our needs change and what might work for someone might not work for you. So I think a big thing over the holiday season is, remembering too that if somebody else is following an eating plan or a diet that works for them and they're trying to encourage you to adapt that approach, number one, remember that they're often coming from a place of love. They're doing what they feel is best for their body, and they want to share that information with you. If you're someone that's focused on intuitive eating and learning how to listen to your body and respond to those cues, you can be confident in that, and you can say, yeah, no, I'm learning how to focus and be more mindful and get curious about my food cravings, and when I overeat, why did that happen? Did I skip a meal? Like, if you're living and you're eating from that place of intention, you can be firm and confident that you know how to fuel your body and not have to worry about those conversations. But sometimes, and I'll share an experience I had with a client in the past who they did not want to go home. They did not want to celebrate the holidays with their family because of the comments that would come up, because they grew up with a mother that was deep in diet culture, focused on food, focused on restriction, focused on weight. And I think as women in our, 40s, I'm right there, that a lot of us still may have that experience with people that we may visit with during the holidays. This individual, it was their mom had been on a diet their whole life. And often we'll see that focus and that restriction backfire. And there's a couple of reasons why it does backfire. So if you think about, if you put a food off limit, so let's say you've told yourself, like, I'm never going to eat cookies. Cookies are my trigger food. I'm going to keep them out of the house. No cookies ever. As soon as we do that, it actually changes the reward pathway in the brain. And it actually makes the body and the brain think that food must be like solid gold. So here's an example. You've told yourself cookies are off limits. You go in the staff room after a luncheon meeting. There's leftover cookies sitting there. There's nobody else around. What happens? Well, if we're living from that intuitive eating lens, we would think, there's cookies there. That's nice. Well, they don't really look very appetizing, or I'm full. Or maybe I'll take one for later. But there wouldn't be that push-pull, whereas if somebody is living in diet culture or thinking from that restrictive eating place, they would think, there's cookies. I'm just going to have one. And then they would take one and they might think, oh, there's nobody here. I haven't had cookies in a long time. They might eat that one cookie, and then they might eat it really quick too. But then their body's like, yeah, we want more, we want more, we want more. And it would be hard for those people to stop eating, because when you're coming from that place of restriction, it makes that reward pathway highlighted. So it's like cookies, cookies, gold, 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 eat, eat, eat. And then, it's going to go back into that cycle of, after, they're finished eating, they don't feel good, then they're going to guilt themselves, shame themselves. I'm not going to do that again. They put it back on restriction, and then the cycle repeats. So the goal when I work with my clients around intuitive eating is to get them to a place of curiosity, number one, but also to a place of food is food, right? So I know it feels like some things only come in the holidays, and maybe some things do. But if we're fueling ourselves consistently during the day, you can go to my website, kathyrichardsrd.com, grab the grab and go lunch guide. It walks you through balanced eating. But if we're eating from that place of, fueling ourselves with a consistent balance of macronutrients every 3 to 4 hours, or at least checking in with our body on a regular basis, we'll be able to go into holiday eating and holiday parties and trust that we can listen to our body. That is my goal. My goal is to get my clients to a place where they can trust that they can listen to their body, where they don't have to keep buying that $90 program and keep enrolling over and over again because they feel like they need those guardrails. We can trust our bodies. As babies, it's the only time when we actually listen to our body. Babies will not overeat. They will not eat more food. If they're full, they will stop eating unless the adults, will shove food in. They're a great example of intuitive eaters because they eat till fullness and then they stop. So the goal is to be able to be curious, check in, and see what hunger and fullness feel like. Now, there's quite a few different circumstances where we might not feel hunger and fullness. Some people don't know what that feels like. And if people are taking medications for ADHD or they're taking medications for weight loss that reduce that appetite, they might need to eat more of what I call mechanical or timed eating because they don't get that feedback from their body. And they don't get that chance to check in and say, okay, am I full or am I not full? How did that feel? But that's a whole other conversation. Today, I want to focus on healthy, happy holidays. And I want you to remember that you've got to fuel yourself consistently. The other thing to think about is to remember that food is connection, right? It's one day of eating, one meal, or maybe it feels like a week of eating, between Christmas and New Year's. But if we're fueling ourselves consistently, if we're coming from a place of intention and being aware when food is around, another thing that we see is when we eat with distraction, we don't get the same feedback. Our body doesn't know that it's got that food and got that satiated feeling from it. So if we're eating with distraction all the time, watching TV, we're on our phones, we're doing, computer work while we're eating, our body won't get that feedback and it can set us up to feel hungrier later on in the day. So that's when some of those cravings will come. Okay? So we want to avoid eating with distraction. And what can happen during holidays, especially, maybe you go to your staff holiday party or you go to, someone's house where you've been invited for a gathering and you don't really know anyone or you feel really nervous. Sometimes it's easy to park ourselves beside the buffet and that's the activity. I'm eating. So I look like I fit in. I'm eating. I don't have to talk to people. That's distracted eating. And that's an easy way to eat beyond fullness and, not to eat with intention. The other thing to think about is to be curious. So if we look at, if you go into a situation where there's a big buffet of food, you might want to walk that buffet first and kind of think, okay, what foods do I not really see on a regular basis? Oh, that's my favorite thing. So you can kind of know by the time you get to that food in the buffet that you've still got room on your plate or room in your, your eyeballs might be bigger than your stomach. But the other thing to be curious about is actually starting to be mindful when we're eating and paying attention. Do I actually enjoy this food? When people come to learn intuitive eating, cookies as the example again, they might actually realize they've put something on that pedestal and made it solid gold. But then if they actually paid attention to that food, they'd be like, that doesn't satisfy me, or that's not what I'm looking for. I don't even like that food. And you get away from that push and pull mentality. So walking the buffet is one way to kind of set yourself up so you have access to what you want. I used to teach, take a smaller plate and take what you want, but just remember that you don't have to clean your plate. I think a lot of us grew up in the clean your plate club era where we would be shamed and encouraged to finish the food on our plate. And I had a client even talk about that this weekend session that, it's hard for them if the food's on the plate, they're going to finish that plate. But if we're actually able to check in with our bodies and sense that fullness and start eating before we're starving, we'll be able to actually stop eating and leave food on the plate, and that feels good. And that's a strategy I actually used to recommend to people. If you're at a place where someone just wants to feed you, because that's their love language and it's just feeding, feeding, feeding. I used to go to a place where the cook would want to feed us, wouldn't want to have leftovers. They would just throw out the leftovers. So they would encourage us to eat more. And I learned in that setting, if I left a little bit of food on my plate because I was actually full and satisfied, that stopped that conversation from happening. So there's different ways that we can approach things for situations that might cause us stress or might feel stressful around eating in the holidays as well. But the goal is to enjoy food, but also maybe plan ahead and have that response ready. So I had another client that did not want to go home, did not want to experience holidays because that mom came from the diet culture, would comment on their food choices. So we worked together to have a couple of like just custom responses, like recognizing, thanks, I know that this is coming from a place of caring. I know that you're just trying to help me, but I've got this. I'm working with a dietitian on this, or I'm following, the hunger cues that my body is giving me, and they might be different from yours. So thinking ahead for, those roadblocks or those people that might feel like they sabotage you, I'm just going to do this, so you should do it too. It's coming from a place of really feeling more confident and learning to trust your body. We can trust our body. It will give us the feedback, but a lot of us aren't listening, with high stress as well. It's hard to hear those cues in your body. So if sleep and stress and activity, if those things that are consistent in your day to day change in the holidays when you're traveling and visiting family, that's another thing to take into account, right? The hunger might not feel the same because you're in a different situation, or you've had different foods, or you haven't eaten the same balance of food. So remember, some days you're going to feel hungrier, and that's normal. Don't make yourself wrong, but fuel yourself consistently through the day. That would be my biggest tip and trick. And then have the awareness, like there's food always available. So if you're just being more aware, more curious about food, that can cut down on some of those, snacking. Like don't sit beside the bowl of chocolates if that's something that you're always going to be eating because they're there. But that's also feedback that you haven't made food neutral, right? You're still like, oh, I'm going to sneak that or have that. But what we see, I had a client a few years ago that was working on intuitive eating, doing super well. They had chips in the house for a month. They hadn't eaten them after, open access to them, which is part of the habituation process in intuitive eating. They suddenly realized like, oh, that craving wasn't there, and they're there if I want them. I just don't feel like eating them. But then a situation arose where they had company visiting, and that little food police, came back in. And they felt like, even though I know I can eat those foods and they fall within, my comfort, I'm able to eat them in a small amount, feel satisfied. The food police noise came back in, and they thought they would be judged for eating that food. So they didn't eat the food. But what happened was, in the middle of the night, they woke up and they hadn't satisfied that want. And then they got up and ate the food. Again, they're not wrong for eating the food. But when we put foods off limits and make foods good or bad, then it gives us this push-pull. And my goal is to help you get to this neutrality where food is food and I'm going to enjoy food. But if we're paying attention, we're going to get feedback pretty quickly from our body that, oh, I didn't feel that great. I ate a lot of sugar and, oh, I have a headache, or I ate a lot of salt yesterday and I feel puffier today. There's feedback from our body if we're focused. But the main things for holiday healthy eating, fuel your body consistently. Make sure you've got your hydration game on. The average female needs about 2.5 liters. The average male needs about 3 liters of total fluid over the day. I'm not saying to drink fluid when you're hungry, but I'm saying if we're dehydrated, that can increase the stress response in the body, which can make us feel hungrier. The body wants us to feel supported. So all the chances that we can to reduce the stress response in the body, adequate sleep, adequate nourishment, adequate hydration, get some movement to get that stress response down. Deep breathing, in for a count of 4, hold it, out through your mouth for a count of 4. I have a deep breathing video. Go take a look for that on my channel. That can be something that you just do intentionally during the day. Every time we stop and do 4 box breaths or more, if you have time, we reduce that cortisol response in the body. And time and time again, every day when I talk to clients about stress, they'll say, yeah, well, no, it's manageable. And a lot of us, especially women, midlife, we've got aging parents, we've got young kids, we're working full time. We feel like, I've got it. I manage the stress. I get to the end of the day, I collapse, I'm good. But that stress response, if it's activated all day, we know stress causes most diseases come from stress. But it also keeps that cortisol level high, which makes it easy for the body to store energy and it doesn't make us feel good. So if we can stop intentionally at different points during the day, do some deep breathing, it's just a way to, again, support the body, right? We're going to nourish the body. We're going to support it with adequate hydration. We're going to feed it consistently for that nourishment. And we're going to reduce stress with exercise or even just incorporating some deep breathing. So those are the tips and tricks for healthy holiday eating. Enjoy food, connect with people, tell people that you enjoy their meals. I used to talk to clients about, having a Tupperware and saying you want to take some of it to go. Go ahead and do that. But don't do that from a place of, I can't eat the amount that I want to eat to feel satisfied. Do that from a place of, oh, I'm full, I'm good, but I would really enjoy to have some of this food again. So that's my healthy, happy holiday tip and trick. I hope this was helpful. As usual, I try to keep my episodes short and sweet, give you some quick takeaways. If you have an episode topic that you want me to cover, reach out and let me know. And I wish you the happiest, healthiest holiday season. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening.